Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Pickleball and Politics, where I combine my quest to stay out of the kitchen with my passion for politics. Since I joined you last, as you know, I was having like a 2-week dry spell. Hadn't won any games at all. And finally, I played the other day, and I played 6 games, and I won 3.5. The half is because we stopped when we were up, because it started to rain. So that is why I won 3.5. I'm going on, I would have won 4, but who knows? Anyways, I'm going to apologize to begin with because I may be a little hoarse today. If I talk too loud, I am sure, there it happened, that my voice will give out. I had terrible laryngitis yesterday. I have spent this past weekend in West Palm Beach, in Palm Beach, Florida, at the Turning Point Action Conference that was held this past week with Turning Point USA. I have so much to talk about. Everyone was there. Everyone spoke, from the former president, Donald Trump, to Tim Ballard. And that was amazing in and of itself. Everyone in between spoke, and I'm going to talk about the speakers. We will probably have 4 or 5 podcasts about Turning Point because it was that amazing. It deserves a few podcasts. But I want to tell you about some observations I had that aren't necessarily about what was said. It's sort of what happened. And I want to tell you what my first observation was. As soon as I got into Palm Beach, I called the hotel, asked where the hotel shuttle was. Phone was working fine. Almost immediately, once I got to my hotel, which was adjacent to the convention center, attached, you could go through the hotel to get to the convention center. I had either no reception, I wasn't getting messages, my messages weren't being sent. I went out that night across the street to an area called The Square. My phone was working a little bit sporadically, but not great, I'll be honest with you. I could take pictures and stuff, but otherwise it was free. And I have a new phone. It was freezing. Things wouldn't send. It was like it was jammed. I've never had quite that problem before. Well, wait, I have had that problem once before. So got to Turning Point, got to the conference in the morning, which is another thing I'm going to talk about next. And the whole day, I had no messages. Later that night, I got back to the room. I, shut off my phone, put it back on, shut off my phone, put it back on, plugged it in. I got a few texts from people saying, like, where have you been all day? Like, nobody has heard from you. I'm like, I'm fine. But I've had no service. I've literally had no service. I'm talking around to dozens of people around me. A lot of them didn't have service either. Most of them who didn't have service, I don't know if it's a regional issue, but they all had AT&T. I don't know if this is a conspiracy or not. I'm just telling you what happened to me. Half of the day Friday, once I got to West Palm Beach, my phone virtually didn't work. All day Saturday, my phone didn't work. Sunday, my phone didn't work again until later at night. It came on. I made a few calls, said I'm alive, don't worry about me. But Sunday, and that was Sunday, Monday, leaving, again, I had horrible service. The same password that worked on the airline to get into their Wi-Fi, that worked Friday, for my airline account, no longer worked. Just didn't work. It wouldn't recognize me. I don't know why. I'm just telling you, it happened, okay? This has happened to me one other time, and it was when I was at the Trump rally in Manchester, New Hampshire back in April, and I did a podcast on that. I had very sporadic service that day also. Okay, number 2 observation was I got there very, very early on Saturday morning, was told it was going to be a rough entrance because Secret Service was in charge because the former president of the United States was speaking that night. Fine. I expected to take a little while. No. 3 hours we were outside, and I don't know how hot it was. It was early, so it was maybe only 87, 89. But by the time it got to noontime, it was well into the 90s, 100% humidity. People were literally experiencing heat exhaustion. They had brought in big fans, and we were in a parking garage, so we had at least some coverage from the sun. I will say Turning Point did all they could do. They were bringing in waters and fans, and they were trying to alleviate this. But the Secret Service only sent 2 metal detectors and 3 agents to handle 8,000 people. Yes. I have only had that happen one other time to me, and again, that was in April when I went to a Trump rally in Manchester, New Hampshire. They had 2 agents and 1 metal detector that day, and it was pouring torrential rain outside. And they just let us get wet, and it was a weird day. The sun came out, it poured rain, we were soaking wet, then the clouds came, we were freezing. Again, the last time my phone wouldn't work, and I had trouble with it, was when I went to a Trump rally. And once again, last time I was freezing cold, pouring rain. This time I was sweating, almost having heat exhaustion. I'm just going to say it's a good thing I use Lume deodorant. You can go where you want with that, okay? That's all I've got to say. But it was obvious that the Secret Service was not on our side. Quite the opposite. I had a small bag. The bags had to be 6 inches by 6 inches, or you could carry a clear 1-gallon trash Ziploc bag. Well, I wasn't going to be carrying the Ziploc bag all day. I was out there at 8:30 in the morning or so. I finally got inside the convention center at around noontime, and then waited hours and hours before they let you even in to sit down. To say I was exhausted is an understatement, just from standing at least 6 hours straight. There wasn't a lot of food in the building. I will say Turning Point was doing everything they could, but the Secret Service had taken over the facility for the day because the former president was going to be speaking, and there wasn't a lot of maneuvering that Turning Point had to try to make the situation better. Again, the only time that's happened to me is in Manchester, where they had no food at all. I mean, they had like 3 sandwiches for sale and some Cokes. They were so underprepared for people who had been outside for 6 hours that day, too. I feel it was a sabotage. I'm going to go right out there and say that. Not sure if you'll even see this video by saying that or not, but I definitely felt like the Secret Service was trying to sabotage the event. I felt they were trying to sabotage the event in Manchester, and I feel like they tried to sabotage the event this past weekend in Palm Beach at Turning Point's Action Conference. I just do. I have one other observation that I want to talk about in this podcast. Like I said, I've got so much to say about every other thing that happened. As soon as I got there on Friday afternoon, after a major delay, we were delayed on the tarmac for 3 hours before we left. And then because of storms, we got rerouted. So a 2.4-hour flight ended up taking about 7 by the time I got on board to the time I left. That's why you always got to have a lot of snacks and stuff when you fly, because you're at their mercy. Once you're on that plane and you're on the tarmac, I'm telling you, it's rough. I grabbed the hotel shuttle and asked them to take me down to the beach. I was about a mile from the beach, 1.5 miles or so. I had no idea where I was going. They were happy to take me down there. They had cute little buggies that took you down. The guy said, give me a call when you're ready to come back. I'll pick you up. So I went down there, spent maybe an hour at the beach. Very nice. Wasn't the best beach in the world, I'll be honest with you. There was nothing around. There was no place to buy a drink or anything like that. But I went in the ocean. I enjoyed myself. I was glad. I got a little sun and a little relaxation there. And so as I was coming back, the driver of the buggy for the hotel had told me where to wait. So I was listening. So this group of kids, initially they started out with 5 and then they ended up as like 10 or 12 of them. Had asked me to take a picture of them. And I was happy to take a picture of them. Within 10 minutes, they'd been joined. The original 5 had been joined with another group of kids. So there was probably about a dozen of them by the time they'd all got together. And their main concern was that one of their friends went to walk back to the hotel by himself. And he did that willingly. He said he wasn't really feeling great and stuff and didn't want to bother anybody, so he walked back by himself. And when they told this group of boys told this group of girls what had happened, the girl said, you let him walk back to the hotel by himself? He has a MAGA hat on. Didn't you think about that? And they all went, what do you mean? And the girl said, I don't think it's safe for him to be walking by himself with the MAGA hat. Get him on the phone right away and make sure he's okay. He shouldn't be by himself in a MAGA hat. And I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. First of all, that 16, 18-year-old kids were worried about their friend because he had a MAGA hat on. And they were MAGA kids. They were there for the youth summit. And I thought, isn't that so sad that these young kids are afraid of the repercussions of what will happen to them if they're not in a buddy system. And this was at 5 o'clock in the afternoon in Palm Beach, Florida. But these kids were worried about their friend because he had a MAGA hat on and he was alone. I want you to think about the fear that those kids are obviously living with. The fear of retribution and of violence, of being obviously mugged, attacked, beaten up, I don't know what, because one of their friends is alone with a MAGA hat on. Have we come to this, people? Have we come to this as a society, that a young person and his friends are afraid for him because he has a MAGA hat on? Think about how much oppression and backlash those kids have gotten in their life up to now because they support Donald Trump, because they support making America great again. They're afraid to be alone and to express themselves, not with their voice, with a red hat. I feel bad for those kids. When I was a teenager, I could have my Ronald Reagan button on at all times, and I didn't worry about retribution. And I live in the most blue state in America. I didn't have to worry about it. There was never any pushback. I don't know if that would be allowed today. Even today in America, could I wear a Ronald Reagan button in this state? I don't know. I might find a Ronald Reagan button and wear it and see what it does. Actually, I think I'll take out my Trump button and see what that does to people. Because I really, really felt bad for those kids. We live in America. Our First Amendment right is our freedom of speech, our freedom of expression. Wearing a red MAGA hat alone at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon in Palm Beach isn't anything a young teenager should be worried about. think about that, if you think that's okay, whew, man, you live in a different, you have a different idea of what America's supposed to be than I do. All right, we end every episode with the dink of the day, and I'm going to say the dink of the day was the United States Secret Service Department under its President Biden's regime, as we like to say, that made sure that the attendees to the Turning Point Action Committee this past weekend were as uncomfortable, as hot, as frustrated as they could possibly be by sending 3 agents to let 8,000 people into the auditorium. You can reach me on Getter at Pickleball and Politics, on Instagram at Pickleball and Politics. You can reach me on Twitter at Pickle and Paul. Go to my website, pickleballandpolitics.com, or you can see me always right here on YouTube at Pickleball and Politics. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe so you never miss my opinions on things. Until next time, you're going to have a whole bunch of videos this week, let me tell you, because I've got a lot to say about this conference this weekend. All right, until next time, thanks for joining me.